Hi students, Notes 5 is on the Bill of Rights. Notes 5 can be found on pages 18 and 19 of your notes packet. You will need a pencil and a highlighter as we go through our notes today. So, throughout this unit, we've been examining the Constitution. The first part we looked at was the preamble, and the preamble was the introduction to the Constitution. The second part that we looked at was the articles, and the articles are the main body of the Constitution that told us how our government would be set up and how it would function. Right? That's the part that gives us the three different branches and all of the jobs that they entail. The third section is the section that we're going to be looking at today, and it's called the amendments. The amendments are the changes that have been made to the Constitution. And those changes have been made to protect the rights of citizens. Again, you'll want pages 18 and 19 of your notes packet open at this time. So the final part of the Constitution contains the amendments. These are the edits and the additions that have been made to the document over time. You see, the framers of the Constitution, or the writers, recognized that no human group could create a 100% perfect document. So that they knew that changes would have to be made over time so that the Constitution would be a living, lasting document. We call it a living document because it is a document that can be changed. At the top of your page 19, you have the definition of amendments. Using your highlighter, please highlight that amendments are changes or additions to the Constitution. Again, these changes are made to protect citizens' rights. So, the writers or the framers of the Constitution wanted to allow for changes to be made when necessary, but they also wanted to make sure that the Constitution was a very stable, reliable document that was not always constantly changing. Therefore, the amendment process is pretty complex and it can be difficult to make those changes. But the purpose of that is to make sure that when the changes are made, they're truly made for the betterment of all people in our country. So, how can changes be made? In the upper third of your notes packet on page 18, you'll see the same diagram. Okay, for an amendment to be brought up in the first place, it requires 2/3 of both houses of Congress to propose the amendment. That means that 66% of our legislative branch have to agree just to bring that change up. In order for that change to actually take place, it requires 3/4 of the states to approve it. That is 75% of our states that have to approve or ratify the amendment. 66% and 75% are pretty high numbers. And the reason for that, again, is because they didn't want us just changing the Constitution willy nilly. They really wanted to make sure that when a change was made, it was a good change that would be lasting. We have added 27 total amendments to the Constitution. 10 of them were added right away with the Bill of Rights, and it's only been changed 17 other times in its history. This allows us to expand rights and liberties to more people than were originally included in the Constitution. And again, that's why we call it a living document, because it allows us to continually examine our values and make sure that our definition of we the people includes all Americans. In fact, the 13th Amendment says that nobody can own another human. That's an example of a change that was made in our Constitution. Our 19th Amendment said that everybody can vote, no matter what their gender is. And our 26th Amendment said that if you're old enough to fight, you're old enough to vote. And they changed the voting age. The second important vocabulary that you see on your packet is the Bill of Rights. That's where most of our focus is going to lie. The Bill of Rights, those are the first 10 amendments added to the U.S. Constitution in 1791. These are the rights of citizens that cannot be taken away. Note that there's a few things to highlight there. So in order to ratify the Constitution, the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, those were the two groups that were debating on whether to sign the Constitution. They agreed to add a Bill of Rights, to protect the individual rights of citizens and to be able to maintain some state sovereignty or independence. So the Bill of Rights contains the first 10 amendments made to the Constitution, and it was approved or ratified in 1791. On the front page of your packet, it's not on there. Oh yeah, 1788. I'm sorry, I was looking at a different part. It looks a little different on the packet timeline that you have. Find the date 1788, and please write in the Constitution was ratified. The Constitution was ratified, right here. In your packet, it's up higher. Ratified means changed. Ratified, approved, excuse me. In 1791, which I don't believe is actually on your timeline, which is weird, the Bill of Rights was added to the Constitution. 1791, the Bill of Rights was added. Okay, let's talk about the amendments themselves. In 1620, pilgrims fled Britain so that they could practice their religious beliefs. British law allowed for freedom of speech and press, but a person could be fined or jailed for making jokes or exaggerated statements about someone in government. That is some of the reason why Amendment 1 was added right away. Amendment 1 is freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom to peacefully assemble, and the freedom to petition. Now, that means that you have the right to worship however you want. You have the right to speak your mind. You have the right to protest as long as it's a peaceful protest. But please understand that when we talk about our rights as people, our rights only go so far as to not infringe on others' rights. Okay? So, do you have the right to speak up and speak out in class? Yes. But if you take away the right for other students to learn, that's not okay. All right? So you have the right to worship as you choose and to celebrate whatever religion you want. But you don't have the right to push that religion on others. Okay, does that make sense as far as understanding how Amendment 1 works? Just know that there are some boundaries. The Second Amendment came about because in 1775, British troops tried to take colonists' guns and ammunition that was stored up outside of Boston in order to keep the colonial militia from being able to rebel and stand up against the king's military. So they put the right to bear arms in there because the British were trying to take the colonists' supplies. So they put in Amendment number 2, the right to form a militia and the right of citizens to bear arms. Now, if you wished, do you have the right to own a gun? Yes. But the boundaries are that you have to go through the proper channels to get one. Okay? Maybe the gun safety classes, the background checks, registering with that, getting the concealed carry licenses, things like that. You can't just go buy one on the black market and have that be legal. Okay? So you have to go through the right channels in order to be able to own that. And many of you that enjoy hunting and such know that you've taken a hunting class and a firearms safety class and things like that. The Third Amendment is the right to not have soldiers live in your home. In 1765, the British government issued the Quartering Act. If you quarter somebody, that means you're housing them. Okay, and that forced colonists to provide food and housing for British soldiers stationed in their town. So British soldiers could literally go to a house and say, hey, we're moving in, when's dinner? Okay, that was not okay. So the Third Amendment was the right to not have soldiers living in your home without your permission. Amendment 4. In 1767, the Townshend Acts allowed British customs officers the right to search people's property, their business, or their home at any time without having to provide evidence of suspicious or illegal behavior. Amendment 4 is freedom from unreasonable search and seizure of private property. Unreasonable search and seizure. That means if you were to get pulled over for a speeding ticket and the officer says you were driving too fast, now I'm going to search your entire car, open your trunk. Does he have a reason to be able to open your trunk? No? Well, then, under Amendment 4, you are protected from unreasonable search and seizure. Okay? People can't just come take your property without providing any evidence of suspicious or illegal behavior. Now, if there is a red gooey substance leaking from your trunk and you got pulled over by a cop and the cop thinks that it might be blood, do they have evidence that there might be some suspicious or illegal behavior? Yes. That means then they would have that right to search. So the idea here is that if somebody were to come and want to search your home, they have to have a warrant, which means that they've proven that they have evidence of suspicious or illegal behavior. Amendment 5. Amendment 5 says that you cannot be forced to testify against yourself. You also cannot be tried twice for the same crime. And, it's not supposed to be said twice there. And then everyone must be given what's called due process of the law. Due process of the law. DUE, process of the law. The reason why this came around is because British courts sometimes forced people to admit guilt by putting someone on trial over and over and over again for a crime until they were found guilty. Sometimes people were punished without ever having a trial at all. Okay? So it's like if you put somebody on the stand and you think they're guilty, you've accused them of murder, right? and the jury finds him not guilty. And you don't like that idea, so you put him on trial again. The jury finds him not guilty, so you put him on trial again, and finally the jury says, okay, you're guilty. You can't do that. You cannot be tried twice for the same crime. Okay, it's called due process of the law that you're given. Amendment 6 is the right to a speedy trial, the right to a lawyer, and the right to confront your accusers. So, you have the right, if you are accused of a crime, you have the right to a lawyer. And even if you cannot afford a lawyer, one will be provided to you. Okay, you also have the right to a speedy trial. Okay, they can't just throw you in jail and leave you there for years without having any resolution. The right to counsel protects all of us from being subject to criminal prosecution in an unfair trial. But nowhere is this right more important than when the accused faces the death penalty. Okay, you have to have legal assistance. You have to be allowed legal assistance. Okay. Amendment 7 says that you have the right to a trial by jury in most civil lawsuits. Okay. King George III got rid of trial by juries in the colonies, and the judges in the colonies sided with the king most of the time. So if you have the King of England and all the judges side with whatever he says, that's not protecting your rights. So the right to a trial by jury protects our individual rights. It allows us to have cases involving these rights to be decided by our peers. Judges rule based on the law, but their personal political beliefs can cloud their interpretation of that law. Okay, so the judge's job in a trial is to provide jury instructions, decide on what evidence is allowed, and to clear up any questions of the law for the jury. But the jury is who makes the decisions. A jury by your peers. And those are literally people in our society. They're not politically motivated to rule a certain way. Amendment 8. Amendment 8 talks about freedom from excessive bail and cruel and unusual punishment. Okay, in 1689, a Bill of Rights was passed in England protecting people from cruel torture methods as punishment. The framers of the Constitution also wanted to make sure bail amounts were decided on individual cases so that more serious crimes have higher bail amounts. Okay? If you get arrested for stealing some food from the gas station, your bail amount would and should be lower than someone who's accused of murdering somebody. Okay? And then cruel and unusual punishment, that protects you from like, okay, so you stole something from the gas station. Does that mean your hands deserve to be cut off? That's a little cruel and unusual. So making sure the punishments fit the crime, and to make sure that the bail also, that money that you have to pay to get out of jail, that is in reason with the crime that is committed. And of course, hopefully none of you ever get yourselves in this type of position to need to exercise some of these amendments, but they're there for you if it's ever needed. Amendment 9. Amendment 9 simply says there's so many rights that should be listed or could be listed, so we're going to make a general statement. There are too many rights to possibly put on one list. So understand that we've got the right to humanity, right? So human rights protected by the Ninth Amendment to travel within the U.S., to enter and leave the country freely, to have an adequate education, to refuse unwanted medical treatment. You have other rights, but they're not in the Constitution specifically. But Amendment 9 protects you for that. And the last one, Amendment 10, The Revolutionary War was fought to remove a big government that overpowered the individual governments. Colonists were taxed by a big, faraway government without having any representation. The Anti Federalists, or the people who were against the Constitution initially, were afraid that states would have to give up too much power. So the 10th Amendment was put in because it keeps the government from becoming too powerful. And what the 10th Amendment says is that powers that are not given to the federal government belong to the states or the people. So, for example, road signs are not mentioned in the Constitution. That means it's a state power. Driver's license, not mentioned in the Constitution. It's a state power. States get to choose whether or not they have the death penalty. Okay, but the legal drinking age in the US is 21, so that's a federal law. Okay, so there are differences between federal laws and state laws. So, way to remember the Bill of Rights. It's kind of goofy. This guy's kind of goofy, but it's kind of neat to be able to remember which rights are which.
Hey, it's Ron White here, the founder of AmericasMemory.com, the website where we tell the story of American history and give memory tips on how to remember it. Today, we're going to tackle the Bill of Rights and how to memorize the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. To remember anything, you need two things. Number one, a place to store the information, and then number two, the information turned into a picture. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create 10 places to store the information. We're going to use our body, so follow after me. Number one is top. 2 is nose, 3 is mouth, 4 is ribs, 5 is liver, 6 is joint, your hip joint, 7 is cap, kneecap, 8 is your fibula, this bone right here. Number 9 is the ball of your foot, and number 10 is the sand. If I'm going too fast for you, just rewind. Number 1 is top. 2 is nose, 3 is mouth, 4 is ribs, 5 is liver, 6 is joint, 7 is cap, 8 is fibula, 9 is ball, and 10 is sand. These are 10 files. We can use these files for anything we want. Tomorrow you can put 10 random words on them if you want, or the first 10 presidents of the United States, whatever you want. Right now we're going to use these 10 files to memorize the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. This is where we're going to store the data. The second thing we need to do to memorize something is turn whatever we want to memorize into a picture. So I'm going to turn these 10 items into pictures, and we're going to put them on our body. Number 1, top of your head. The picture that I want you to see up there is somebody with a megaphone. They're up here with the megaphone, and they're yelling, and they're yelling at all sides. A megaphone on the top of your head. See a megaphone right there. Number 2, boom, your nose gets shot off. Boom, your nose gets shot off by a bullet. Number 3, in your mouth. We're putting quarters in your mouth. Open up your mouth like that and imagine quarters are dropping in your mouth. Number 4, your ribs. I want you to see a spotlight on your ribs. A spotlight going all over your ribs, just back and forth, the spotlight. Number 5, your liver. I want you to see the TV show Jeopardy with Alex Trebek right there in your liver. See them buzzing the answers, trying to buzz in. You know the answer. Jeopardy's the key word right there. Spotlight here, quarters right here. Now we're on number 6, your hip joint. On number 6, I want you to see a criminal, and he's running back and forth from hip joint to hip joint. He's being chased by a judge. A criminal being chased by a judge on your hip joints. Number 7, on your kneecap, I want you to see a jury right here, and this jury is chanting the word civil, civil, civil. A jury right here chanting the word civil. Number 8, on your fibula, this bone right here, I want you to see somebody with a stick, and they're hitting it really hard. They got a whip, and they're whipping you right there. Your blood's coming out of your fibula. Number 9, the ball of your foot. On the ball of your foot, I want you to see security guards, and they're protecting that ball of your foot. They're all down there. They're protecting them. Nobody can get near your feet because of the security guards. Number 10, on the ground, think of a picture for your state. I live in Texas, so a picture for my state is a cowboy boot. I got cowboy boots all over the floor, and I got millions of people all surrounding those cowboy boots. So boots and people. There we have it. That's 10 pictures put on 10 spots, and we just memorized the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. Number one, a speaker. First Amendment is freedom of speech. Number two, a bullet, the right to bear arms. Number three, quarters. You do not have to quarter soldiers during time of war. Quartering soldiers is the Third Amendment to the Constitution. Number four, your protection against unreasonable search and seizure. A searchlight, a spotlight right here. Number five, jeopardy. You cannot be tried for the same crime twice. It's called double jeopardy. You can't be tried for the same crime twice. Also, the Fifth Amendment's where you don't have to incriminate yourself. You can plead the Fifth. Number six, a criminal running back and forth, running real fast. That is you are guaranteed a speedy trial, running back and forth really fast in criminal cases. Number seven, civil. In civil cases, a trial by jury. Number eight, punishment, the protection from unreasonable punishment or excessive bail. Number nine, protection. Even though the wording of this one is your rights that are not enumerated in the Constitution are still protected, basically meaning rights that aren't mentioned are still rights. And then the last one, number 10 on the ground, it is referring to the protection of states' rights and the rights of the people. So there you have it. The Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. You should have had them memorized. If I went too fast, just rewind and do this again. But my name's Ron White. Visit us at americasmemory.com. I am America's Memory.
And that concludes our Notes 5 on the amendments to the Constitution.